Let me go ahead and hit record and we can formally get started. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Preservation New Jersey's new virtual series, Talks with Our 10 Most. Please note that, as I just said, this event is being recorded. I'm Melissa Ziobro. I'm the Specialist Professor of Public History at Monmouth University in West Long Branch, New Jersey, but I am wearing my Preservation New Jersey board member hat right now. I am tonight's host, but I'd like to give a quick shout out to our new Executive Director, Kelly Raffel, who I believe is on the call, and our President, Paul Muir, and our Education Committee Chair, Mark Nonestad, and our Office Coordinator, Dale Perry, and all of our other board members. As Kelly said earlier today, teamwork makes the dream work. So Preservation New Jersey has a lot of folks involved behind the scenes, most of them volunteers, making all of this happen. If you're not familiar with Preservation New Jersey, let me tell you just a little bit about the organization. It was founded in 1978, and it is a statewide member-supported nonprofit historic preservation organization that promotes economic vitality, sustainability, and heritage of New Jersey's diverse communities through advocacy and education. You can learn more about what we do and hopefully get involved yourself by visiting our website, preservationnewjersey.org. We are perhaps most well known for our annual 10 most endangered places in New Jersey list, which draws attention to remarkable sites and also their many challenges. We hope that listing sites will be a catalyst for change and promote positive solutions that can save these sites in the end. So I'll talk more about that in just a second. I want to note that we also publish instructional and informational toolkits, as well as other educational materials and publications. We have an informative newsletter, we have a very active social media presence, and much more. So again, I just want to stress, we've got this new executive director, a lot of energy, and we are so excited for new folks to get involved with the organization. So with that, bureaucratic announcements out of the way, let's move on to tonight's program. As I said, this is called Talks with Our 10 Most, and it's intended to reach back to sites that have previously been listed as one of the 10 most endangered sites in the state. Just kind of see how they're doing and help promote them and see what lessons they've learned over the years that they can share with folks who might be doing this work out there themselves. So tonight we are sitting down with Mike Ruane and Fred Carl, two key players at the InfoAge Science and History Museums at the Camp Evans National Historic Landmark in Wall Township in Monmouth County. I have known both of these gentlemen for close to 20 years now, and I just have so much respect and admiration for the incredible work. You guys are going to behave, right? For the incredible work that they have done over there at InfoAge. And I'm sure you're going to be very impressed by them as well. Camp Evans was listed as a Preservation New Jersey 10 most endangered site in 2002. If you've never heard of InfoAge or Camp Evans, the site opened in the early 1900s as a Marconi wireless station. It served as a Navy and RCA communications laboratory during World War I. And then it was known as the Army's Camp Evans from World War II until 1997, when the Army left the property. Camp Evans innovations really helped to win World War II. They revolutionized communications, and they helped to usher in the space age. So this site was once in great peril, as Mike and Fred are going to explain to you, but today they are a thriving nonprofit with over 40,000 square feet of exhibit space spread over a dozen buildings. So getting there wasn't easy, guys, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the InfoAge Camp Evans story. I'll ask Fred and Mike questions for roughly 45 minutes, and then we will open the floor to Q&A from the audience. So guys, first, I asked if you could just tell us a little bit about yourselves, because I think this is so interesting. Neither of you studied as preservationists, right? You had these robust other careers having nothing really to do with history or preservation, and yet you helped to save this site. So, Mike, could you go first and just tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I have a very eclectic background. I'm a Jersey City kid. I was born in the Bronx, raised in Jersey City, went to St. Peter's Prep there and ended up at Seton Hall University with an accounting degree. And I was accountant for a career time of 3 months before I went in the military. And I spent 5 years in active duty from 1963 to 1968. And when I got out of the Army, I joined Chase Manhattan Bank, became an assistant treasurer over in New York City, and I was there for 5 years before I moved to a bank in Jersey. And I was Community State Bank up in Linden. I was the vice president of human resources. Matter of fact, that's what I was working on when I was at Chase Manhattan Bank also. When after that period of time, I ended up, because I was traveling all sorts of hours, I ended up applying for a job at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, again in the human resources field. And I started there in 1976, and about 4 years later, I ended up in operations, and I stayed in operations for the rest of my career there, well, until I retired in 2000. And then from 2000 till 2011, 2015, actually 2015, I had a private company that did counterterrorism exercises and planning and consulting. And then I was with Monmouth County Office on Aging, Disabilities, and Veteran Services as the executive director. Absolutely nothing that I had done prior, and including the time that I was working at Camp Evans, had to do with history. It was just a fact that I loved it. So that was the way I got into it. I think Fred should be the guy who should talk about, how he ended up, because he's the founder of InfoAge. If it wasn't for him, we would not be here today because of his persistence and work with the township and the local community to make certain that they felt there was a need here for this type of institution.
Thanks, Mike, but you left something out. You were in Vietnam. You
Yep.
have a Purple Heart, and you obtained the rank of Bird Colonel.
Yep.
And we have enjoyed your skills all these years. So I'm going to share. I threw some pictures together, and possibly I can share the screen. And here's how it started. The Asbury Park Press, when they heard that Camp Evans was going to be closed, sent out a reporter, and this is what that reporter felt. Evans is likely to fade into oblivion. And then they go on and say, even though it's hard to find, it's sort of remarkable. And so let's see, how come I'm not finding, move the screen? Here we go. Okay, well, Camp Evans has not faded, and it's a gift for future generations to cherish and enjoy. Right? And a lot of people had lots of skills to put this, to make this happen. Okay. And first of all, like, we had to get buy-in, like Mike said, and it took a lot of going to conferences, and this is Monmouth County's Archives Day, and getting people to know of Evans, as well as many Wall Township committees. And again, if it wasn't for Wall Township committees over the years backing us and supporting us and coming to our aid when there was no power after Sandy, et cetera, we would not be here. For a while, I felt I was in a hole with all the things that needed to be done. Here I'm hooking up a sewer lateral the evening before a school group came for a week because, surprise, surprise, it wasn't hooked up. Then our opening day came, and it was great. Like one of those silly moments that endears you to a person besides their expert abilities is when we're getting ready for this, I realized I had forgotten a podium, and I'm like in a mild panic. And Mike goes and grabs a radiator cover, takes it out and puts it on our stand, and we had a podium. And it's things like that. We have complementary skills, and it was great. You know,
Yep. Well, I think one of the things that that got me interested in this place and how I ended up here, Melissa, was I was working at Fort Monmouth, and all of a sudden I got an opportunity one day. There was a job opening, and it was for what they call the base transition coordinator. Fred was already involved in the base realignment and closure side of the house on the civilian community, but Fort Monmouth was responsible for getting rid of the Evans area. That was basically what it was. And base realignment and closure was like a three-legged stool. The first leg of the stool was getting the people out of the base. The second leg of the stool was cleaning up the base. And just to let you know, it cost over $30 million just the environmental remediation of the Evans area. And then the third leg of the stool was the base transition coordinator who got rid of the base, and that was my job. So I applied for the position, and it was unusual with the government, because when I was being interviewed, I was being interviewed by one member of the military and two outside civilians. And they decided that I had what they were looking for. And I started to become involved with the Evans area. And as this was 1995. And as I got more and more involved in it, and this was just getting rid of the base, I realized, what a piece of history this was. You hear, Washington slept here, or, this church has been here for 200 years. Well, Washington just stayed overnight. Okay, fine. The church is there for 200 years, but what is significant besides that? You had the Evans area, like you pointed out in the beginning. It was one of the stations on Marconi's worldwide wireless web. World War I breaks out, and all of a sudden the U.S. Navy comes in here. Right after World War I, RCA almost was founded at this location. In the mid-20s, the KKK had it, and they went bankrupt here. And I thought it was very ironic that they were bought out by King's Christian College out of New York, with a Dr. Percy Crawford, who became one of the first national radio evangelists. Then in 1941, the United States Army took over. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but as you pointed out, it opened up radio astronomy with the Diana Project, satellite, meteorological satellites with Project, oh good Lord, Tyros. I forget, we got too many projects.
oh yeah.
And then you have Project SCORE, which was satellite communications.
Mhm.
So many of the things that we take for granted today were developed or discovered right here. And I'll pass it off to Fred.
Well, let me pause you gentlemen there for just 1 second, if I can.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
those who aren't familiar with the story, I want to flesh out a couple of the details. There's this incredibly historic site. It had a lot of uses. The Army was the last owner. They decide they don't want it anymore. They're going to give it away, essentially, right? Mike,
Yeah.
you get tapped to manage that on behalf of the Army. And Fred, you're a citizen. You're not a preservationist. You're just a concerned citizen who says amazing things have happened here. We need to make sure that's not lost. Now, you two could have been at odds, right? I mean, you really could have been at odds. And there were times, before you get to the beautiful opening of InfoAge, where you come together to make a podium, Fred, as you noted, there was a lot of tough times between that. Could you just comment a little bit on the turnover period and some of the trials and tribulations that were occurring as the land transitioned from the Army to its next life, much of which, became InfoAge. Other parcels went to Brookdale and to the town for Little League fields, but the bulk of the site became InfoAge. But it wasn't easy. So talk to us just a little bit, please, about those obstacles.
Well, first of all, on the base transition side of the house, the Army was supposed to have turned over InfoAge in turnkey condition.
Okay.
It was basically, when the Army said, okay, here it is, the property is now yours, Brookdale Community College or Wall Township, they could supposedly literally walk in, turn on the lights and begin working. Far from the truth. When they passed off the property, well, first of all, the Army also, Department of Defense also gave the Army $250,000 a year to maintain the property here while they were going through the process of transfer. That money was used primarily on Fort Monmouth itself. It did not find its way down to the Evans area. One of the things that happened down here when they were doing remediation, they found mercury. They thought that it went in the sewer line. So they dug up all the sewer lines. When they dug up all the sewer lines, they also ripped up all the electrical lines. The electrical lines, thereby the installation had no electricity. Winter came, pipes froze, pipes exploded, mold formed, sewers were still not here, and the Army would not replace the sewers. It was only through the Wall Township lawyer, I guess it was Mike Fitzgerald, and Chris Smith.
And Roger McLaughlin.
Roger McLaughlin, pardon me. Roger McLaughlin and Chris Smith, that they literally talked to the Secretary of the Army. And the Secretary of the Army held the responsible project officer's feet to the fire. And they ended up at least reinstalling sewers, minimal, reinstalling electricity, minimal, and actually replacing some of the broken windows and glass and broken doors that had occurred, through vandalism and also through neglect. When we took over this property, and we don't have the pictures here to show you, but there was the two Marconi cottages that are located right across the street from the Marconi office building where we're sitting right now. One of them had 4 feet of water in it. The floors, and they were oak floors, beautiful oak floors, were cupped because they had warped. And Fred, why don't you tell them about some of the stuff? Because Fred, I couldn't do it because I was still working for the Army at the time. Fred was Mr. Remediation at that time.
Well, when we first saw the site, it looked like we could shampoo the carpets and move in, okay? And I read all the BRAC regulations, and I believed at the time that the Army and its civilian contractors were honorable and had a code of honor. And so the first thing I had to do was get the site historic credentials. And that I had a lot of help. One of my friends, Dr. Dick Bingham at Fort Monmouth, he straightened me out one day, researching in there, and he comes in, he goes, "Stop." And I'm like, what do you mean stop? He goes, "Just finish the thing, get it on the register. You will never stop finding Camp Evans history. And once you're on the register, nobody cares what more to add to it." So that worked out. Went to Trenton, got it on the register, and then the Army got vindictive. And so we had to get Congressman Smith back again because the Army refused to process it to the next level, to take it from the state of New Jersey register to the national register. And we had to file a petition for the failure of the Army to process a register with the Army Federal Preservation Officer, who wrote back to Chris Smith's office that they didn't have enough staff to read this 37-page narrative. And so I was working with the keeper of the National Register, and he said, "Well, could you send us the unofficial copy and all the photographs and the maps and the supporting stuff?" So I did. And I'm doing what the Army is telling me to do, to send it here and send it there. And then I got a call from a guy possibly in Texas, and he goes, "You read the regulations yourself. Don't listen to what these people are telling you. I'm sending this back to Fort Monmouth, and make sure it gets done the right way. And it turned out they were telling me to route it to places it didn't need it to go. And so finally, they allowed it to leave Fort Monmouth. It got to the Federal Army Preservation Officer. He signed it, and I didn't know this. He signed it like 3 o'clock the day it had to go into the Army Bulletin or Army Federal Register. So here we go. 61 days later, and I don't know any of this, I get a call, and it's the keeper of the National Register, Patrick Andrus, and he goes in one of these like concerned voice. He goes, "Fred, we need to talk to you about your nomination," right? And I'm like, oh crap, what is it now, right? And I hear this. "I thought you'd want to be on the phone when we signed Camp Evans on the National Register." So that's one of those happy moments along the way. And once it was on the register, it had to be treated like historic property. The damage was done. You know, the sewers were ripped out. Congressman Smith forced them to put the sewers back again. Like Mike said, it was pretty ugly, but we survived. And, you know, let's see, what else can we say with photos? Or do you want to ask another question?
Well, I mean, that's incredible. And you have a very unique story as your property was rescued from the Army, but I think there are clear takeaways for anyone here, right? You may have to be tenacious in the face of bureaucracy and pushback, but if you are creative and determined, you know, you can see things through to the end.
And crazy.
Yeah.
And crazy. So, you know, you have a long road from that article from 1993 that says, you know, Camp Evans is toast, and from being listed as a Preservation New Jersey 10 most site in 2002. But as you can see in this photo here, the place is now thriving, right? Before we let the audience in, we were talking about how you have 28 major buildings and several other smaller structures that you are responsible for. And I'm sure some folks here on the call are thinking, God, it's so hard to preserve and maintain one house, right? One structure. And here you're dealing with over 24 of them. So tell us how you would describe InfoAge today. What are some of the biggest successes in your eyes?
Well, I would like to quote Elizabeth Merritt of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. She was quoted in the New York Times as saying, InfoAge is an extraordinary success. And that's really cool. A person of that stature and all the historic preservation project that she's involved in with the National Trust to say that to the New York Times. So to me, that's heartwarming. And Elizabeth Merritt is another person who saved us from when the Army wanted to auction the property. She used her professional skills of walking a fine line so that we weren't put in the position where we had to sue the Army, because we were told that you can sue the Army, and if you win, the roofs will be sitting in the basement. So she pulled a miracle from our point of view. And like part of the reason that motivated me to make this sort of like a Science Center theme and find all these friends like Mike and Claire French was the need of education. I taught for a number of years as a science teacher, and I always felt the kids needed to be inspired to learn science, because when they wanted to, they would. But if they weren't inspired, science would not benefit them. So again, education is a key thing. And another thing Mike brought to this organization, besides his organizational know-how because of his military background, is he brought a level of class. Here he is at the Wall of Honor, where each year we honor a number of persons, And like, here's one of my favorite, John Marchetti. I got to spend time with John. And there's how many people have you honored? Do you remember offhand?
28 right now.
28. And it's really cool. And like when we had the McAfee family here, or I'm just trying to think of the others, the pride the families felt that their family member who could never tell their family what they did all the years was being recognized. Okay. And as one person said, I could finally tell my grandchildren what I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's our lobby with the plaques. And again, you couldn't enter this building without a hazmat suit on when it was turned over to us. So there we go. It just took a license to remediate lead-based paint, my scuba equipment, a Tyvek suit, a 6 mil plastic bag, lots of Clorox, and I forget what else I used, and 6 dehumidifiers to dry the building out. And I painted the whole interior, and then we could bring in others. And believe me, like Tom Hayes here, he brought in dozens and dozens of volunteers from New Jersey Natural Gas. George Newberry from Wall Township, he led the support in dozens of ways. Okay. And again, this is Princess Marconi here. We have 2 commissioners here, our friend Tom Arnone and Lillian Berry. And behind are just some of the people who spent hours doing things to make this happen because they were infected with this place. We also got recognized by the IEEE with milestone. We have 3 of these recognitions. Okay, here we are in front of the dish, celebrating the presenting of the National Landmark plaque by the National Park Service. Okay, and one of our members, a board member, Bob Giordano, who can be claimed that he's part of the father of the electronic battlefield. He created a book called Camp Evans, The Untold Story. And this is a gem because we could research World War II and World War I was a discovery. But when we went into the 1960s and 70s, when nobody knew if the information was classified, if I called them up and said, hey, I hear you worked on Project Rembas, they would have hung up the phone. But Bob could call them up and go, hey, you remember when you worked for me and I had you as the deputy in this project? I need you to write a paragraph on that. And they did. So we have this wonderful resource. Another, John Waters, wrote a book of his experience. And then because of the many persons of color being hired at Fort Monmouth and at Camp Evans, the site was one time known as the Black Brain Trust. Yeah. And so, again, thanks to Congressman Smith, the post office that delivered Dr. McAfee's mail is now named in his honor. Yeah.
Dr. McAfee was...
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, you know, Fred's touched an awful lot on the history, and I touched somewhat on it also. But I think the thing... the history in trying to restore this place is just to be able to use it as a center of STEM education. And here's our reasoning behind that. Dr. McAfee, one of the things that he realized more than anything else, like many other people, was education. And he educated first, with Black students, but then after that, students, anyone. And he taught at Monmouth University for years as an adjunct professor over there. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of people from Fort Monmouth who also believed in education. Fort Monmouth leaves, base realignment and closure leaves. In 2012, or over the years when we first lost, you lost the signal school. You lost the chaplain school that was here, but the biggest hit to this place was losing Fort Monmouth Communications Electronics Command. You lost 10,000 people, the majority of whom were scientists and engineers and project managers. The Army would tell you that, okay, well, don't worry about it. And, it takes 5 years in order to build back up that economic base and get jobs back. The only unfortunate part about it is right now we're over 10 years away and we still haven't redeveloped Fort Monmouth. The jobs that they're talking about are primarily service jobs. Okay, New Jersey has lost Bell Labs for the most part. We have the Sarnoff Laboratories that's over there. We lost Fort Monmouth. We lost all the defense contractors. There was another 10,000 people that supported this, huge communications electronics complex. Our vision and one of our submissions is inspire children. Inspire children as to what happened here. To inspire children on to technology that's going to make their lives better. Our vision, and if you look on our website, our vision is school buses. We want our parking lots full of school buses. We've started our education programs right now. We brought on a gentleman by name of Mark Natanagara about 2 years ago as one of our board members. We had guys like myself and Fred and other guys that wanted to get our education programs going, but we didn't have the background in it. Fred was a teacher, but he was not an administrator. Mark comes in as an educator for years, as a principal for years, and as an assistant superintendent for years in the Toms River school system, huge school system. All of a sudden, he became the head of our education committee. You look at our education programs right now on our lecture series, our lecture series, 2 and 3 lectures a month, stressing nothing but history of the area and communications, electronics, calculus, how to make calculus fun. What are you kidding me? Man, I got out of math major at Seton Hall because I couldn't even spell calculus. But we have schools. Last year we had over 1,000 students come in here. Okay. Before they used to come in here and just look at things touchy-feely and so forth. And it's nice. It's almost like just walking into a museum. Our programs right now are, we reach out to the teachers. What are you looking for? What specifically do you want? How can we help you? Here's where we have it. We use New Jersey standards, the school standards. The kids come in. We had a group come in here about, 40 students come in here a little while ago, about a month ago. These kids walked out of here, they could solder, okay? They learned how to make connections on solder. They built small radios. They had people who have built some of the equipment that we use right now in our everyday lives here as our docents. So we expect this year, and one of the things Mark just reported on a meeting I just had, we have not only schools we already had, but we have 8 more schools lined up, just to come in here, okay? And I'm not talking about just a school around the corner. Today, but because of the weather, it was canceled. We had 140 kids coming in out of Brooklyn, New York, okay? We Zoom with Yale, okay? We have Rensselaer Polytech coming down here. We have Lakewood bringing up hundreds of homeschool kids. We have autistic students coming in. We reach out and try to get these students, these kids, to walk in here, and when they walk out, all they go is wow. Because we say history was made here, fine. However, we are New Jersey's mini Smithsonian. We have artifacts and equipment here, hands-on displays, touchy-feely, learn, and the kids love it. I mean, we have. Hey, you ever see a kid take a 13-year-old take a dial phone and figure out what to do with it? They don't have a clue, but all of a sudden they walk out here, they learn more about communications, electronics, and how to talk than they ever had before.
So you all are just going from strength to strength, right? You save the sites, you do the environmental remediation, and look where you are today, right? We said some 40,000 feet of exhibit space, thousands of children coming, and more every year, but you need a lot of money to do this, right? To keep the building stable and to pursue your educational mission. So what have some of your most dependable sources of funding been?
I can hit
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
Yeah. Wall Township has been supporting us for years. they give us a nice grant every year. I'm going to start from the bottom up with Wall Township. Monmouth County has given us thousands of dollars, small grants. We just picked up a COVID grant for education, $20,000 grant that we turned into our program, buying equipment for our makerspace in our classrooms. The state of New Jersey, the Historic Trust, the Historic Commission, these every year they support us with general operating support grants, which help us keep the doors open. We have what, a 1776 fund?
Yeah, the foundation.
Yep, 1776 Foundation. Manasquan Bank. We had New Jersey Natural Gas.
Oh, yes.
We have all these people that help us, and it helps offset maybe 40% of the funding that we need here, and the rest we pick up, believe it or not, through stuff like admissions, through special programs. We have a train show here in the wintertime where kids come in and literally play with trains, and they build. When we have our Makers Day, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, they will come in and they will actually build a scene, okay, for a train set. Okay, they'll come in and they'll fire bottle rockets. They'll do other stuff. But where was I on this? I just start rolling and I just keep rolling. But
Yeah, no, well, see, the beautiful thing is you have the passion. And there are dozens of people who have the passion because they have faith that by exposing kids to exciting things from the past and pointing to the future, that the kids will have a better attitude and will be more open to learning when they go back into the classroom. And it's a wonderful thing. Over the years, thanks to things like Preservation New Jersey and the 10 Most, we got a lot of publicity. Our organization got recharged because, unfortunately, the people in the base realignment and closure group were working us over pretty good. And they sort of backed off when the people in charge started reading articles in the newspapers citing the Army's mismanagement of the site. So 10 Most was fundamental to us. And we are very grateful and appreciative.
You mentioned Wall Township as a key source of funding, and several times throughout tonight's conversation, you pointed out different politicians in the photos. Can you comment a little bit on how important you think it is that sites establish good relationships with public officials at the local, state, and even federal level?
I think I think the relationships are priceless. For a number of reasons. Number one, Wall Township, they actually own the property here, so we lease the property from them. But so we count on them not only for that grant that we get every year, but also for in-kind stuff like snow plowing, trimming back trees. But we also have a member of their township committee on our board. And I'll tell you, literally the reason is, number one, we want to hook into the town and we want the town to have a hook into us. We want to be able to reach out to the town to ask them for stuff. And we want that individual from the town who's on our board to be able to say, hey, I'm seeing what's going on here. And, he's keeping an eye on that. We're doing our due diligence and what we're supposed to do. And we as a board are doing what we're supposed to do to take care of this site.
Can I interject something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Early on, if it wasn't for Mike and Claire's French, this overzealous, obsessed person wouldn't have gotten the town and the county's buy-in. So having political translators is so important. Okay? And now Mike translates to the town, what a benefit we are to the Wall Township Committee and to the school system, how we give Wall Township students a place to show their stuff and what they can do to distinguish themselves among other candidates for things. Like one of our favorite stories is a young man, Josh Foxton, when he got into the Naval Academy, which was his dream. His mentor said to his parents, you know why we picked Josh? Because they're all excellent who apply here, and it's tough to pick one from another. It was that project he did at that historic site. That's the kind of stuff we want to deliver to Wall Township, and we are doing it. We've had 25 young men get Eagle Awards, and we're now starting to have a few young ladies getting the Girl Scout, I think it's Golden Star.
Yeah, I believe so.
And so that's another level that we offer here. And then another one is the volunteers love this place. They have a place to go. They have friendships. It's a wonderful thing.
And their wives are very happy to get them out of the house and leave them alone. But you know what one of the other things too, which also helps us, is that, you know, Wall Township looks at us and we're not just a rundown military base. One of our big things over the years, as much as we could afford to do so, was to increase our curb appeal. You know, so it meant painting buildings, maintaining the lawns, and you know, the landscaping, et cetera. And we also invite our local politicians, et cetera, to visit, to come here. We will go out to them to make what we call the state of InfoAge. I mean, I've made these presentations for a bunch of years. I'll go out to anybody in any place and show them the state of InfoAge, who we are, how we started, where we are right now, what we are looking for the future. And the good part about this is that they take a look at us, and we have so many people in so many parts of the community that push out our words, that, you know, we're not any longer the what's that place behind the fence line, which is what it was years ago when it was a top secret installation. Now we have more and more people coming in all the time as we get more and more exposure, both through the local communities, through the county, you know, through the state. But if it wasn't literally, if it wasn't for the politicians and our relationship with them, with the governing bodies, I guess is a better way to put it, and our relationships with them, we'd be a lot further behind than we are right now.
Yep. And where's our big gun right there? Congressman Smith.
Yep.
And Elizabeth Merritt and Roger McLaughlin. So if you get into a lack of support or negative support, attorneys make the difference. So next question.
Well, no, that was a great piece of advice and segues nicely into my next question, which will be my last, because I promised I would go for about 45 minutes before opening it to the floor. So you said attorneys are key. What other advice would you have for someone trying to save a historic site?
The first thing I do is go see a psychiatrist. Okay. Next thing, I get blood pressure pills. I would tell your wife you want to be locked in the cellar for a couple of months, because it
Mike, stop scaring everybody off.
no, it's the main thing. I think one of the main things you need is a passion for it. You have to believe in what you're doing. And you know, it's and you have to be able to get others to believe in your message also.
And like we could mention the rewards on a personal level. These persons weren't given an award. They were part of our haunted hotel, which raised us lots of money. But as we go through these photographs, we see friends that we have gained through this effort. And, you know, the joy of friendships and shared goals and shared successes is a wonderful thing. And like our future endeavors is is now to not only support those that are here volunteering, but to get the next generation that'll take over when we retire. And that's a good thing. And it's wonderful to be here in that position, to be able to say, we now have to start educating those who are going to follow in our footsteps.
Yep.
You know, I will ask just one more question, and it's inspired by something somebody wrote in the chat. They said, what's with the skeletons? And this is actually a perfect opportunity to talk about creative fundraising, right? Do you want to comment on the base of terror for a minute?
Yeah, we started we started this many years ago as a temporary fundraiser until we could get a legitimate funding stream. And we initially started off with the Haunted Hotel, and we did that for about 2 years. But and we had local school drama clubs involved in it, and the hotel was taking a beating, and so we ended up moving it outside. But it worked for us. It worked for us for many years.
13.
Yep. And matter of fact, I loved being part of it because I was. I was the butcher, and it gave me a chance to self-actualize, and do things I couldn't do when I was wearing a suit. But it was a great fundraiser for us. But again, it was a temporary fundraiser, and I guess at the max, our best year, we cleared $75,000. I mean, we netted $75,000. And everyone around started feeling, hey, that's a pretty good fundraiser. And they started doing it. And, our net proceeds went down. And then after 3 years, we decided to get out of it. And in a way, it was good that we got out of it, because it forced us to get realistic and find the funding streams that we needed. And the other thing was that, it was a haunted hotel site. The problem was it was all volunteers. The problem was it was 3 months to build up, or 4 months to build up the scenery, because it was it was close to a quarter mile long, 3/8 of a mile long was the walk that you took through this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But our campus looked like a dump, and when we finally cleaned it up, it was good. It was good. Our campus right now is a place that we are proud of, and the people walking here are proud of.
All right. Well, I will let the audience ask some questions now. I mean, I could keep going all night, but let's open the floor to the audience. You can unmute yourself and ask a question if you would like, or you can type it in the chat, and I would be happy to read it. And we've got one already. Can you tell us about the potential threat to the horn antenna?
Well,
That's yours.
Yeah, that's another site that is tied to the wonderful heritage that Monmouth County has in the exploration of the universe. Camp Evans here let's see if I can find this site. Hold on. This site here, there was an antenna that showed that mankind with the right electronic equipment could breach the ionosphere and get a signal out into space and back. So that was number one. Number two was Carl Jansky over at the Bell Labs property in Homedale, showing that you could use radio waves to do astronomy, right? Then in 1946, also with Project Diana and getting the waves through the ionospheres, that was the birth of radar astronomy. And all during this time, there was a theory of the Big Bang and how there was a cosmic microwave background, and that had no evidence to back up various scientists' theories. And then in 1965, two Bell Labs scientists working on a leftover piece of equipment from Project Echo that used an antenna like the one you see in our picture here, They were bouncing radio waves off that echo balloon and sending radio messages across the Atlantic. And then satellites became more reliable, and that they took over that piece of equipment, got a background buzz that they couldn't get rid of. Princeton scientists who were looking for that found out about it. And that was the first evidence for the cosmic microwave background. And so it is potentially in danger, but Homedale has 3 organizations working to save that. And again, that will complete Monmouth County's trifecta in exploring the universe. But, you know, it's a good thing.
Okay. Anyone else? Feel free to unmute yourself or type a question in the chat.
Okay, I have a question. I just wondered if you've ever, in the course of, preserving the property, have you ever looked into the possibility of offering yourself as a location for startup businesses, particularly those in the technical, engineering fields that might like being on a campus, like being on a site like this because of the history, or has that ever been a possibility?
Yeah, we had looked at that at one time, and one of the problems, we're stuck with what we can and what we can't do in this piece of property because it's through the Department of Interior. For example, we can't rent out any space to any profit for-profit organizations or businesses. So the only thing that we can work with is nonprofits.
Bob, are you a former employee of the state of New Jersey?
Yeah, I am a former.
Okay, now I recognize your voice. Thank you 1,000 times for all the wonderful things you did with us, with getting us through the state register process, the national register, and your support in getting us on the national landmark status. And thank you for accompanying us to Washington, D.C. to the hearing.
It was all my pleasure. There's a little story I want to tell about how one hand washes the other, Fred. And I don't know, I'm going to try to share my screen here. Or actually, if I just put my video on, can I be seen?
Yeah, that should work. And Bob, I know and trust you, so I'm happy to give you screen sharing capability. Hold on, let's see.
Well, actually, I don't want to share my screen. I want you to see my video.
Okay. Give me one
Because I want to hold up something, and I want to ask if anybody knows what this is.
Okay, we see you now, and let's
See
see.
me now? Well, I don't see myself, but can you see what I'm holding in my hand?
Does it say Fidelitone recording
It says
wire?
the Delatone recording wire. Does
Hmm.
anyone know what that means?
Was that for wire recorders?
That was from wire recorders. This is a wire recording in this little case. Now, how many of you can raise your hand and say, honestly, you know what a wire recording is?
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah.
Okay, a few. All right, very good. I used to get no hands raised.
Mhm.
But I want to tell a story about InfoAge and this wire recording. One of the things I inherited from my grandparents was my grandfather's wire recorder, a device that made audio recordings before there was audio tape. In that short interval of time, this was the technology before audio tape. And audio tape came along in the 1950s, but I'm getting at the digression there. But my grandfather, who was a filmmaker and who was wedded to silent films, I think was trying to somehow start edging toward working audio into his movies. And he started with a wire recorder. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough after that to do much. But one of the things he did in 1947 with his new wire recorder was he went to my father's side, he went to visit my father's side of the family. And he made a recording in 1947 of some of the folks on their side of the family. Now, I had the recorder, and it was basically pretty brand new in terms of, it had all the bells and whistles. You remember this, Fred? It had all the bells and whistles in the case that came with it when it was new. So it had all the new original instructions. It had the new, it had the original schematic design for all the electronics that were in it. And that was crucial because when I several years ago, I was not able to use this anymore. I was not able to operate it. It had stopped working. And so I needed somebody who could repair a wire recorder. Those people don't grow on trees. And if there's anything more rare than a wire recorder, it's somebody who knows how to repair a wire recorder. Well, I went around to various places and asked, and mostly got blank stares when I asked. And I went to I figured, I got a brilliant brainstorm. I went to the Princeton University audio visual department, right? I figured if there's anybody around who will have collections of wire recordings somewhere in their library or whatever, it'll be Princeton University. So I went to the audio visual department, whose responsibility is to update the electronic formats of old things into newer things, right? So I figured, okay, this is great. I go to the senior guy, the guy whose title was the senior whatever, the head guy at this department. And I asked him the question that I came there to ask, and the first words out of his mouth were, "What is a wire recorder?"
Oh,
I knew that was coming.
yeah.
I kind of knew right then that it wasn't going to go well. Eventually, I reached out to Fred Carl and InfoAge, and they had people, volunteers, one of the organizations that shared their space, volunteers,
Radio guys.
had somebody who not only knew how to fix a wire recorder, but had just fixed one before I asked and was ready for mine.
Wow.
and replaced all the electronics that needed to be replaced. And, I shared with them some of the things that, like those specifications and schematics that I didn't need, but could do them some good. And as a result of all of that, I got not only a wire recording, but I got to hear my great-grandfather's voice for the first time. And my grandfather, who had made the recording, also died before I was born.
Wow.
And I grew up with stories about him, but I had never heard his voice until I heard the wire recordings that he made. And I would never have been able to do that without InfoAge.
That is awesome, because voice is an important human sense. In one of the boxes was Robert Johnson, and if he's Robert Johnson from Framingham College, he interviewed a Mr. Jones, who was heard that V2 rockets that persons from Camp Evans were sent out to New Mexico to track. When they started blowing up for some unknown reason, Mr. Jones took his car up into the mountains, tuned it to the radio frequency for self-destruct, and he heard a radio station, a police station in Washington State, car 54, where are you? And the the rocket blew up, and he came down and reported that to famed Werner von Braun of Operation Paperclip. And oh, by the way, the radar and radio Operation Paperclip persons were brought here. Mr. Jones was sent up in an airplane with a wire recorder because Werner von Braun wouldn't go in the plane. And he came and brought radio signals, recorded out that frequency. So that stopped blowing up V2s. There's
It's
always a Camp Evans story.
It's incredible story after incredible story, but we're almost out of time. So I'd just like to ask, we could maybe do one last question from the audience. If anybody has one, you can type it in the chat or unmute yourself. Okay, they're going to keep us honest. We said we were going to go for an hour, so we will call it a night. Thank you so much, Fred and Mike. You overcame so much to get the Camp Evans site to where it is today. I hope Preservation New Jersey's advocacy played a small role in helping you with that. And we wish you so much continued success in the future. So thanks you too.
Thank you,
Thanks
Melissa.
everybody for
Thank you very
joining
much,
us.
I tell you.
Yep.
Good night, everybody.
Hey, if you want to go visit, you can find them on social media or infoage.org. You can spend the whole day there. They are open Wednesdays, Saturdays, Sundays. All the info you need is on their webpage, infoage.org. Thanks, everybody.
One final thing, Melissa, you still have a few more days to see the exhibit at Morven that includes a panel on Jansky and the horn antenna and Jansky's work. And I got a little bit better understanding of what Jansky achieved by going there than I had previously understood.
And
So,
our phone booth is out there too.
yeah, they meant I spoke with someone who mentioned that you guys really cooperated with them in the creation of that exhibit.
Yeah. Yep. Good people.
We all have to work together and help each other in this community, right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much
everyone.
for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Have a
night.
great evening, a great weekend, and stay dry and warm.
Bye-bye.
Bye.